I do want to talk about this on a national conversation level as well as international conversation level. What happened in Israel is horrific, point blank, and the vast majority of people, yourself included, I'm assuming based on your last comments, are concerned about innocent Palestinians that are in harm's way in Gaza right now. So what do you think is missing from the national and international conversation when it comes to this conflict?
I think that there have been a few Israeli politicians who have threatened or said that Israel will do things that Israel will not do. And it's so strange because in international affairs, usually a country claims to be better than its actual behavior. This may be one of the few occasions where Israel is working to not to besiege Gaza, but rather to go in and take out Hamas with the minimum possible Palestinian casualties. And yet you can point to this statement or that statement by some mid-level politicians in Israel that paint Israel in a worse light. And they may think that that's to their political advantage, but it confuses people because almost always in international affairs, countries behave worse than their rhetoric. This may be one of the few cases where a country acts better than its rhetoric. So I'm pleased to see that fuel is getting in, and I'll say that there is, under international law, food and water are in one category, and medicine is in that category too. Fuel and electric power are in a very different category, and even that secondary category, Israel is allowing fuel in, knowing again that some of it will be used by armed Hamas terrorists.
You had a moment this weekend. You were on MSNBC and you criticized part of their coverage. You warned, quote, not to take at face value statements by the Gaza Department of Health. Where in this conflict do you think the deficits in the media coverage are?
Well, you see referring to Hamas as militants. They're not militants, they're terrorists. You see people talking about governmental ministries in Gaza as if they're separate and perhaps bureaucratic and civil service. No, those are Hamas agencies like their so-called Ministry of Health. Now, that doesn't mean that everything they say is false, but you should identify it. Hamas propaganda says this is the number of Palestinian casualties, and people will take it with a grain of salt. And I know the press is anxious to get information about what's happening in Gaza, but you can't embrace Hamas sources of that information as if they're likely to be accurate.
Do you think, though, anything's missing from this conversation and this coverage that you would like to see more of?
Basically, and I think it's getting out, but once a war takes place, it's terrible. And I blame the politicians who try to achieve their objectives through unreasonable objectives through violent means. Hamas's objective is to kill or expel from the entire Middle East every Jew who lives in Israel. Once you start with that objective and stick with it again and again, it's very hard not to be responsible for thousands of innocent deaths. What we need to see is a two-state solution, and Hamas makes that so much more difficult, not only by rejecting it, but by this terrible attack on Israel that makes it harder to persuade Israelis that they want to live beside a Palestinian state. But ultimately, there are two peoples in the land. There need to be two countries. And the sooner we get there, and with all the security guarantees that Israel needs, and all the disarmaments and all of the law enforcement that's necessary to protect Israel from terrorists, the sooner we get there, the sooner there'll be at least a movement towards substantial peace in the Middle East.